Already. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode number 3. Charles, seems these weeks are going by quick.
They going,
Uh,
yeah. With Super Bowl just left, and now we got that big space of dead air on TV.
right? It's like when's the next big event going on? But anyway, guys, I'm Brad Larson, and this is Revive and Drive podcast, and I'm here with my co-host Charles Irby. He's a SAP counselor. If you guys are looking for a SAP counselor, this is the one to call. And Charles, where can they call you at?
They can call me at 404-620-1944.
And I will put here on the screen in front of you guys right now. We will put his website. It's focus7.us, where you get all the information that we share with you guys from his website, as well as our podcast website, where you can watch and listen to our previous episodes. How was your week, though, this week?
It was a strange week. I got some stories from drivers that were a little odd. Like there's one driver that called and he has a violation, but he decided long ago that he wanted to just retire from driving. He did it for 25 years, but he wants to be a driver for his relative, his uncle, just as a van driver. So
Mm-hmm.
they go to the DMV, they check out everything, and this SAP violation is there blocking everything. So the insurance is even raised according to him. So
Hmm.
he called me out of all the people that he can call. And I tell you, I get a lot of calls like this. I don't exactly know why, but I appreciate it. I think it's because together, me and you, our reputation has been very helpful to others around the nation
For the SAP stuff,
for the
absolutely.
stats, yeah, for the SAP stuff. So
Yeah.
they call us, and all like the solutions is only thing I can tell them would be to. Is he said the driver does not need a DOT number. Well, the driver does need a DOT number if they're going to use a consortium. So he could go through the
Okay.
SAP process with me. One, two, three, and four will be completed on the clearinghouse. Then he gets a consortium to do step 5, which cleans up his license. And if it's prohibited, it becomes valid. And if it got downgraded, it becomes reinstated instantly. However, he's concerned about the follow ups. And that's where everything drops because if he's not going to use a CDL, he's not going to do any follow ups. And it just will sit on there forever, not 5 years, but forever. So,
Now,
yeah.
last week we actually talked about to go back a little bit. We were talking about the insurance rates. You said the insurance rates for that company would have gone up, or is that
Well,
what they told
according
him?
to him,
Yeah.
now it's, yeah, according to my studies, I haven't seen it. And if there's any drivers out there that notice their insurance rates have went up, put it in the comments. Let us know what's going on with you.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on that proof of the because I again I've looked. I've even tried to like set up an insurance just to see if the option was there, and I've never seen it. So I really am trying to find proof.
Yeah, trying to find proof and see if this is a real roadblock or not. And I guess we depended on you guys out there in the listening areas, listening to our podcast. Let us know. Let us know your personal experience if your insurance or the company's, your employer insurance has been affected by a SAP violation. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this week I felt like it went by really quick. I was looking forward to this week, and I had a lot of things kind of happen. If you guys noticed today, um, we do not have our video up. I I guess I could just say I got some stuff going on, so I gotta redo the studio. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So this is just a voice only podcast, but thankfully, people can find us on Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio now, and all those links will be down in the description. And of course, Podbean on our website. And I post some episodes on TikTok and the biggest one, YouTube.
That's right. That's right. Some of the best shows are when you building a plane as you fly it. So,
For reals though, that is the truth. You know, when we talk about like a lot of people that go through like your program, man, you said you feel like kind of like a new person. Like it feels good to be able to help someone, you know.
Yes.
And it sucks that there's some people who've already went to the SAP program that spent that, you know, thousands of money, and they just they didn't find you. You know, they didn't know about you. They didn't, you know, and it's a real big problem because they get ripped off.
They get ripped off, and I get that a lot, especially after the end of our conversation. The driver is feeling content. He finally got some solutions to his problems, had somebody called him back quickly, and he's feeling pretty good. And that's when they finally relax, Brad, and start talking like person to person. Like they will go into the areas of they got all this bad advice from this previous person that took their case, took their money, and just abandoned them right at step 4, never heard from them again, and they got a ton of questions. And they have employers that needs to talk to them, the SAPs, and they're unreachable.
They
So that
also have SAPs that will talk down and be disrespectful, treat them differently, huh?
oh boy, it's like they talking to you like Denzel in Training Day. I'll put cases on all y'all. I have you shining shoes in Pelican Bay. Jake, you shot me in the ass.
Oh my gosh.
You don't talk to drivers like that. You don't put cases on people. They have a SAP violation. They're human beings, and to be so rough with people and try to use a power balance like I'm up here, you're down there. No,
Mhm.
that really doesn't help anybody with their recovery, their motivation to even put down drugs and alcohol, especially marijuana. It don't work. You exasperate the problem. So
Yep,
I know you heard of stories like this, Brad.
absolutely. You know, one thing I've noticed is drivers when the biggest thing that they have an issue with is they're afraid to go to the SAP program because we've talked about this in the past. They think it's over, but the lack of experience. I've been noticing an increase of SAP drivers coming right out of school,
Hmm.
like right out of truck driving school. And Charles, when I tell you, like I can help almost anybody get a job, I feel like these people are like the hardest ones to help find a job, man. Because they don't have experience. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like you know, if you guys are going to get into truck driving, if you don't have a CDL right now, and you guys, you know, whether you smoke weed or do whatever, wait, just wait 90 days. I mean, you can wait you know, wait a month after smoking weed, and you can probably pee clean. Take your own home drug test first, right?
Right.
And then go take one with the DOT. But yeah, they drug test you in the schools. Like the moment you sign up for school, I remember I had to take one. And then once you get your CDL, if you drug test again and you fail, that's a no bueno, you know. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you guys are looking to pursue a career into trucking, be sure you got your system clean and to stop right then and there. Um, because I'm trying to find a solution. I can't right now. I will keep looking and doing my research, but the odds of you finding a job out of truck driving school and how to be on the SAP is very low.
Yes.
That's the facts. Everybody else that has experience, not so much. You can get a job tomorrow and be fine. But the new guys, I just want to put a warning out there. It is very, very, very hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to research, and I've done a lot of research.
Yeah.
And there's one company I know of out of Wisconsin that will hire SAP drivers right out of school,
Yes. Yes.
and they have so many new SAP drivers that they're not hiring no more. Their trucks are full, you know. And I
Yes.
hear they actually treat the drivers well and pay well. So it's
Thank
a
God for that. Thank God
yeah,
for that. Yeah.
eh,
You know,
but
I,
uh,
I've
uh,
I've ran. Yeah, I'll grab this right quick. Because you said something that really stimulated this whole conversation.
Mhm.
conversation. Is very difficult if you are in CDL technical school, truck driving school. You got your CLP, so that means now you're on the clearinghouse, and you do drugs. Typically you smoke marijuana. You continue with your previous occupation with getting high. Why did that happen? And in my estimation, I want to see what you think about this, and all you guys out there listening to this podcast, so put it in the comments. Is it because the word hasn't got out to you that as a CDL holder, you cannot have drugs in your system? You're prohibited from using the big five: cocaine, amphetamines, opiates, PCP, alcohol is in there, and etc. Has the word not gotten out to you? That should have been the first topic in driving school on your first day, in my opinion. What do you think, Brad?
So actually, you are correct, Charles. When I went to truck driving school, this was 10 years, 11 years ago, mind you. That is something they talk about. That is some of the first things they talk about. So that's an issue. They tell you, listen, if you fail, you're gonna be on the you're gonna be on the clearinghouse. You're gonna have to go to the SAP. Um, but sometimes there's people out there who still they think they're working at McDonald's or somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
They want to take that risk, and the lack of judgment. They don't understand that once you have that CDL, you with the big dogs now.
That's right. You Yeah, exactly. You're with the big dogs. You're not only working as an employee, but you are really associated with the federal government.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
you
You're
know,
now a exactly. We run under federal laws, not state
right.
laws, federal. And that's the part that I don't think a lot of people get. Um, I'm gonna pull up some stuff. In fact, do you know what Reddit is, Charles?
Yes, yes. Heard of it.
Well, there's actually a Reddit subpage for drivers who have failed drug tests.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. But yeah, they you were before we started the show, you were talking to me about the employers wanting some quick responses. What were you just talking about that? Talk
Well,
about that a little bit?
this is I got this a lot this week for some reason. Some weeks are just different from others. This week has been a I've gotten a lot of thank yous from employers and consistently said thank you for the quick response.
Hmm.
Now, I've always given employers quick response when they request the return to duty letter with testing schedule for a driver they're about to hire. In Focus 7, and me and you talked about this a lot, it's important for employers to get that PDF file from the SAP quickly because that driver might be sitting right there being interviewed. And if they just sit there and just wait on the return to duty letter, what's going to happen to the interview? And
Hmm.
employers are not impressed when it takes days in order they have to send a reply email to request it again. I automatically send, the minute I see the email, I send it, I fire it off. I got a system in place that does that. And they were really happy this week. And I suspect it was because they really had those drivers sitting in front of them at that moment. So, what does that say about hiring here in the new Trump administration days and everything that's going on with the economy? It might mean that it might be good news. They're having more drivers in front of them, which means they're being more tactical and more enthusiastic about getting drivers, hiring drivers. I hope that's what that means. But I got a lot of thank you, Charles. Thank you. And that means a lot to a lot of employers, and it really helps my reputation. So anybody out there that does have SAP violations, you want to get hired. That's the whole point of going through the return to duty, SAP return to duty process, is to get a job again if you lost yours. You want your interview to go well, and you want it to go quickly. A SAP has a lot of bearing on that happening. Find a SAP like me or somebody, but call me, and you will get a SAP that shoot out your return to duty letter with testing schedule, your certificate of treatment or any treatment information they need, and also all the instructions for the clearinghouse. You can't leave employers just hanging, not knowing what to do once they get the driver in their clearinghouse and start doing things. They have to have step 5, the return to duty step, explained to them clearly.
Mhm.
So they really appreciate the instructions also. So
They
yeah, go ahead, Brent.
uh, no, and you're right. Like they that's another thing. If it's not explained clearly, the misinformation can spread.
Right. And they take it upon themselves to think what's supposed to happen when they are not going by federal regulations because they're just winging it now. So they really appreciate it when they got enough information in writing that's very clear to them. Like step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. And it's, oh yeah, I get it now. I get it now. I get a lot of that from employers. So I want as many SAP drivers that really are confused about the process, and struggling with this, just give me a call. And if you want to even have a consultation, there's my man right there, Mr.
Mhm.
Larson. So yes, but give me a call. I could be your SAP on this.
Here we go. Charles, so I'm still trying to find that Reddit post, but here's some stories. This one was from 8 years ago. Now, one thing I also want to notice is why people that go on this that fail a drug test of trucking probably don't have the information or hasn't called or whatever, or given up, is because the disrespect from other truck drivers that occur.
Oh,
You know, the other drivers that say just turn in your CDL, go work for McDonald's. But
oh,
I'm gonna share this little story here because we were talking about the schools. Um, let's see. All right, so this guy says failed drug test during school. What now? He said he signed up with Pam, started school with them. On day 4, the results from our drug tests came back, and I failed for weed. What's the one thing with people always fail for, Charles?
yeah, that
he
weed. Yeah.
said he said he had stopped smoking 5 weeks beforehand. Thought he would be okay. I thought they would just use some local non-government place like most jobs do, but I looked at the paperwork for the test and it turns out it was done through a federal testing place.
Yeah.
So do I have some kind of federal record now? Now this was 8 years ago, so he does. He says, "Will I be able to test for my CDL permit?" Oh, in a few months after I for sure know I'll pass the drug test. So he hasn't even had his permit, so he shouldn't be on the clearinghouse. Interesting. He says, "Are there any other schools that will take me? Can I train by myself and take the CDL test when I know I will pass the drug test? Or will that one federal test be on my record forever?" And basically, I can't ever drive commercially for the rest of my life now. Is my driving career over before it started? I'm
Uh,
curious.
you want to know if in my experience, what I have to say about that?
Hmm.
I think no, it's not over. Now, once you do have a positive drug screen for marijuana or any of the other big 5, it's going to be posted, even from a CDL school. It's going to be posted on the clearinghouse. You will
Mhm.
have to go. Step 1, you have to go through the SAP process. That's the absolute first thing. Everybody out there listening, you have to go through the SAP process first before you do anything. The federal regulation says you must stand down. That's a military term. You must stand down. That means you go home and, like I say, go home and just watch Jerry Springer, because you're not going to be a CDL driver until you do take care of this. So you grab a SAP and do your research and listen to our podcast, get some information, and call me. And you
Mhm.
go through the SAP process. And the thing about right now with the CDL schools is that they do have the authority by the FMCSA to act as a consortium. Yeah, they can act as a consortium.
Really?
Yes. Now that's some more information that's not getting out there to drivers that me and
Yeah.
you are, yeah, putting it out there. So
Well,
They
if you read, if you listen to the posts, it says he hasn't even taken his permit, but people already tell him his truck, like he's not. Listen, it says, so he asked, "Do I have a federal record now? Will I be able to test for my CDL permit in a few months after I know for sure I will pass the drug test?" So he just says, "Will I be able to test for my CDL permit?" So he's not even in the record. But like
according
the
to what he's
information,
saying, yeah, according to what he's saying, and we
yeah,
have to find out how old this is. This was created in 2011,
yeah, it
so
was
it
8 years
wasn't
ago.
really a clearinghouse back then. So it was the wild, wild west back then. They were
Well,
having shootouts in the street concerning violations. People were getting away with everything. So he may be right that it wasn't
well,
even reported or anything. But
one
nowadays,
guy here.
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, one guy responded, "You can get your medical card license and permit without having to drug test," and that's true. You can, like, all you need is your own truck. Um, but even your CDL, but to get hired with a company, I think you have to have a drug test. He said, "Wait like 4 or 5 months, then try again." Also, from an ex-hardcore pothead, if you want to drive rigs and put down the weed, trucks or
Mhm.
weed, take your pick. There's no other alternative. When you realize you can go to jail after an accident and you're found having a weed in your system, or even just lose your job, it makes it pretty easy to stop smoking. And somebody even says, yes, it's perfectly okay to get wasted on alcohol every night when you're off duty. I
Mm,
mean, and that's one thing that we've talked about is the fact that, I could drive 14 hour or 11 hours, uh, do my 14-hour shift, and then I can get a hotel, get a beer or two, which will get me buzzed. I'm a lightweight. I know. Just a little, maybe my third beer or whatever. I would get buzzed so quick. Either way, however, and then as long as I'm sober, by the time I hit the road again, it could be the next day. You know, that's wild. And but that's the problem with weed is it can stay in your system a lot longer. But are you actually high still from the effects of weed? There's a difference between the half life of it and
mhm.
actually
Yes,
of it being in your system and you still feeling different from it, right?
right,
uh
right,
like say somebody smoked a joint yesterday, yeah, it's in their system, doesn't mean that they're high from it, you know.
right, right. There's
Mm,
the effects of the THC is gone, but
yep.
the THC is the chemical product is still lodged into your fat. It's still in your system, and your body's gonna report it. And that's all your body is gonna give it up and say, yeah, I did it. When you
Yeah,
take your drug test. So uh,
but one thing we kind of pushed on is somebody that went to school, if they take a hair follicle, you know they might have had, maybe they were heavy smokers and then they were ready to stop and they could still feel hair follicle after 90 days. And why should they get punished for that? Why should a company like Swift or whatever say no because that dude decided to change his life and now you're gonna ruin him by saying no because of a hair follicle, but he passed his P test. So
that's the perfect example of being railroaded.
yeah.
Exactly. The hair follicle, like we always say, is more than a drug test or a drug screening. It's a history, and you shouldn't be punished by it. It could go back as far as 6 months. Some are that sensitive. However, that was 6 months ago. You're trying
Mhm.
to get this job today. You don't have any drugs actually in your system today. Why should you be reported as a violation for drug use?
Mhm.
Because you didn't do it today. It just it's not right. It's stopping from putting food on the table. Uh, However, thank God, as far as I know right now, the FMCSA still doesn't recognize hair follicles. I better check again. Companies can deny you employment, but you cannot get a SAP violation for hair follicles. Now, both of us are going to start to hit the encyclopedias to see what's going on, see if that's really still true. And if anybody in the listening audience, hit us in the comments about your experience. Is that true, or did it
Mhm.
change? You, what I'm saying is that you cannot get a SAP violation for a hair follicle violation, but you could still get denied employment. Is that true?
Um, yeah, for the hair violation, you get denied.
Yeah, you get denied employment. But I hope the FMCSA hasn't uh, considered it a SAP violation.
No, no, they can't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank God. I hope
I
that's still true.
Charles, get this one. So I'm reading Reddit still as well, and somebody makes a good point. I'm gonna read the story here in a minute, but here's one for you. Um, where to go? Where to go? Where to go? Oh yeah, they said let's make it impossible for someone who pissed dirty just because of some weed to find a driving job, but no one bats an eye at the 375 guy we all know couldn't pass a damn DOT physical and is on the brink of a heart attack and shouldn't be operating a CMV. And
Yeah,
there. I mean, obesity. Shoot, we might do an episode about that, like the health in the trucking industry. Like the double standards. Okay, somebody smoked weed a month ago, failed a drug test, but you also have another guy who doesn't do drugs, but he eats so much that it can kill him. Was he can have a heart attack on the road.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this is there's a
The,
lot of
the
here's a
contradictions in it. Yeah.
oh
However,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
someone with the FMCSA will quickly say you cannot cause crashes or injuries by being 350 pounds under the wheel.
I beg
But you
I beg to
can cause
differ.
it with, yeah, there we go. But
uh,
you could definitely cause a crash or injuries or fatalities on the highways by having those five drugs in your system. So
yes,
that's what they're going to argue. However, we better, this is another one. Let's talk about it in the comments. Being unfit, we'll use that word, extremely unfit, and trying to operate a machine like a
hmm
truck with a wheel that you and
hmm
you got to be somewhat nimble. Uh, you tell me, Brad. What do you think?
I listen. I'm a big dude. All right. When I was truck driving, I was about 300 pounds. I'm down to 230. Um, but I know that I had a problem with sleep apnea, and which can cause you to fall asleep while you're driving.
Yeah, yeah,
I had a problem with like breathing a lot, all these problems, and I was still able to get a 2-year DOT physical. Now that I'm not driving, let me explain to you kind of how I got my 2-year physical with the sleep apnea. Um, here's how easy it was, and I might get in trouble for saying this. You ready though, Charles?
yeah. I'm ducking, but I'm ready.
All right. Yeah, I basically just did not put I had sleep apnea on my next DOT physical.
Hmm.
And when they when I went and did my physical, they didn't test me for sleep apnea
Right,
either. They
right.
didn't measure my neck because when you go to some DOT physical places, you can pay $50 for a shady DOT physical place
Oh,
that'll pass you. They just want to make sure your blood pressure's good, which mine was,
hmm,
and they check it for diabetes and like and yeah, I mean recently I found out I had diabetes, but yeah, there's some places, they go all out. They do the squat and cough, they measure your neck, they make you lift stuff, that like a true physical. But then if you look enough, you'll find those places that you just pay $50 to, it's probably more now, and they just do a quick 20-minute physical and you got your 2 years. Like it's that easy, and it's not regulated. And I don't think that's talked about enough at all. They say they're regulated, but they get away with a lot. So,
so there could be drivers that really are doesn't meet the fitness test,
mhm.
and if you can give the waitre d a extra 50, they can find a table for you. That type of thing. Boy, boy,
I
boy.
guess you could say that. They
Mm,
yeah, like I mean, if I didn't, so like right now, um, say that I went in there and I said I don't have diabetes, right? And I believe my A1C went down. It was at a 12.6, but I think it's down to a 5.6.
oh, good, good.
Yeah. Now there's supposed to be a database. I don't know because they would have found the sleep apnea thing, but they never did. And all I have to do is like, yeah, I'm perfectly healthy. And if they test me and my A1C is still at a 5.6, technically I don't need all the paperwork that people are talking about, and nothing ever happened. I got a 2 year. You know, it's weird, but it goes to show. I mean, caffeine, food, caffeine's a drug.
Yeah.
Food, sugar, the sugar in food, sugar's a drug.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
the most addictive product in the world, sugar.
exactly, and it kills more people than cigarettes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you go like the farther spectrum of the double standards, I mean, everyone's so worried about weed and all this other shit, but there's other dangers that we don't really talk about too much because there's a lot of big guys like myself on the road that don't want to talk about it. They don't want to accept it.
I guess the discretion has to lie with a lot with the employer. If the employer sees a blimp come through the door, they they will automatically size them up for that.
Yeah, there's companies like Rail. If you weigh over, if your BMI is not a certain like if you're not in the right BMI or you're considered obese, then they go full out with their own DOT physical provided by their own DOT doctor, and they will do the full DOT on you, and then they charge you for that sleep apnea test. And if you do not take your machine with you on the road and have a certain compliance, they will take you off the road.
Oh boy,
it's happened to me.
Wow, that's I guess it would have to produce a lot of new federal regulations if they went ahead with this. And is that what people really want? I don't know. It's really complicated.
Nobody wants more. Yeah, no, I think there needs to be less bureaucracy in all of it, and less regulation. But at the same time, there's a thin line there, So I don't know if you see on your screen here, Charles. This is that. This one happened 2 years ago. And I didn't read the full thing, but I wanted to read it with you. But from looking at some of the descript or the comments, from what I was reading, I think he has some misinformation on here well, you'll see what I'm talking about because he's talking about 4 years of random drug testing. So let me get into it. It says he failed a pre-employment DOT drug test. And it says back in 2020 he had a failed pre-employment drug test. This is when they stated the process of putting you in the clearinghouse. So this was during the clearinghouse times, and you have to do the return to duty process. And now he says, if you don't know the return to duty process, it basically consists of you having to go through a drug and alcohol counselor like you, Charles, that is approved by the FMCSA like you. They set up a plan for you. Now here is his plan. I believe he failed for weed, but tell me if this is not wild. His plan was 4 years of random drug testing and a 12-hour online class. They scheduled the drug testing and sent to my employer, and they set it up. They set up the following tests for me. Now, here's where the problem comes in. On the post, it says you have to do 4 years of testing. If you don't test because you don't have an employer, then you're just sitting in limbo. Nobody will hire you once you are in the RTD process. That's false, I think.
Yeah, that's not exactly true. Once you finish step 5, the return to duty step, you're eligible to be hired. Now he's talking about the follow-up step 6, the follow-up step, the last step. Yeah, you can linger in that, and you'll linger a long time if you don't get off your tricycle.
He says it shows in your clearinghouse that you are no longer prohibited and are able to operate as CMV, just like you said. Once you complete your testing schedule, then you are released from the RTD process from you employee, and it shows in the clearinghouse. I think there is a confusion on how this actually works. There's not a company in the United States I have found that will hire a driver once a dirty UA is in the clearinghouse. That's false.
That's false.
I know this is very controversial. Most will say, oh, well, you made your bed. I think there's confusion on how it actually works. FMCSA puts the program out to clean the industry up, but they may as well have said, just suspend your CDL for a set amount of time because it's impossible to get a job, therefore impossible to get testing done to complete the process. This is a very taboo subject, and many won't talk about it. Well, we have a whole podcast talking about it.
That's right.
I'm going to reply to him with our podcast link. And anyway,
Good.
yeah, it says let's see, they won't talk about or admit to it, but until we do, nobody will know that the system they put into place is not working. Companies have their own drug and alcohol policy, and what the FMCSA is doing does not coincide. I'd like to know what others are experiencing. Interesting. Well, regardless, the FMCSA is law. That is the rule of law, period.
That's right.
What the FMCSA does, that is what is going to stop you from going to other companies, like the clearinghouse is part of the FMCSA. The other companies, their policies that they have, for example, is hair follicles. FMCSA does not require hair follicles. A company may. Another policy is if you say you go out with your friends and you have a drink, you blow 0.04. Now the minimum that's for the FMCSA with a CDL. Now to get a DUI, you can actually blow 0.04. It without a CDL, it's 0.08. Company policy at some companies is 0.02.
That's right.
So
I had one this week, 0.02. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the dichotomy of this whole thing. But back to this Reddit post right here that we're looking at, and everybody around the nation is looking at this. I'm going to say something that hopefully simplify this.
Okay.
A driver can actually go through steps. There's 6 steps on the clearinghouse. A driver can go through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without an employer. Without an employer. You can get all those steps done, I repeat, without an employer being in play. Step 6 will need an employer. And why is that? Why all those steps can be done? Because step 5 can be done now by, I'm the SAP. I'm going to do the first 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I knock it out for you. You can get a consortium without having a DOT number, without being an independent operator, just a regular company driver type guy. You can get a consortium to do step 5 now, the return to duty step, the big one. Only thing left is step 6. If you do have a DOT number and you're an independent operator, you can even have the consortium do step 6 for you. An actual company employer now is never in play. Does that make sense, Brad?
It does.
So
this is some misinformation, and this is the stuff we need
right.
to stop. And Charles, what do you think about me just referring to Reddit every now and then? Maybe we could start our own Reddit called Revive and Drive Podcast, Ask Me Anything, and we explain that we're a trucker and SAP counselor. We can answer questions like this. Because when you go to like a page with over 305,000 members, like this one has, you're gonna get people that are gonna down you. They're gonna judge you. The truckers. They love talking shit. That's what they do. All right. I was one, and I have no problem with it. It's just how they are. Now, seeing this guy, the original poster said, "Everyone makes mistakes in life. The whole point of this post is to raise awareness on how difficult it is to get through the RTD process. It's not.
It's not.
I'm living proof. It's not."
He must have been in contact with people like maybe some SAPs or taking the opinions of people that didn't really matter. And he got that type of conclusion. He had wrong assumptions and came to wrong conclusions.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. He said right here, he says, let's see, he says the whole point of the raise awareness, how difficult it is to get through the RTD process. He says FMCSA is doing what is right by putting it in the clearinghouse, but they need to follow up on what is it doing to drivers. They have set them up to fail. Many are spending, and he puts a bunch of dollar symbols, which I'm assuming thousands, because we've heard of that. People spending way too much money on the RTD process, thinking they will be able to get back to work. But honestly, just a dead end. No, if you don't have experience, maybe. I'm not going to lie, Charles. It could be. I'm hoping to fix that soon. He says, how many people are in the RTD process and can't get a job in the industry? Well, everyone I've worked with has got a job.
Me too.
So
That is true. Repeat that, Brad. I think the entire nation of truck drivers need to get this in our heads. Repeat that about who gets jobs. Just
What?
about
Who?
everybody.
Oh yeah, everybody who's talked to me,
Everybody.
talked to you, has got a job.
You know, all of
Um,
my young SAP drivers that come to me in driving school, they are so worried about that. And they say, I talked to this one SAP and this lady said, oh, forget about it. And then I talked to another one. They said the same thing. And then I called you and you're telling me something different. Who do I believe?
mhm.
And I had to break it down for this person. It is not over. The SAP process is designed by the FMCSA to be a second chance program, even if you are in school. And
Mhm.
as long as you got a COP, you now that other Reddit section we read, that was way back in 2011. But
Yep.
right now in 2020, since then, the clearinghouse, the schools will put you in the clearinghouse quickly. You'll get a permit relatively
But
quickly, and
still,
you
the
yes,
schools. The problem is, well, no. If here's the thing is, Charles, if they fail the drug test before getting their learner's
COP.
permit,
Yeah,
yeah,
man,
they don't have to go through the SAP program because
that's right. That's right.
they're not they do not have a license yet. Hell, this guy said some folks I know just waited 3 years, and I don't know if the violation was removed. It's not
Hmm.
removed after all six. It's done after the follow ups. If companies didn't care, but they got a job with little or no response, I was told pay 850, take a little 850. Charles, can you
That's
imagine
twice as much
800
as
and
my fee. Twice as much.
Jesus, take a little class and prepare for 6 random drug tests. Can you imagine paying $850 for something that you could pay 420 for? Like, that's wild.
Well, I think one of his first assumptions in this is he trying to say that you cannot get a job until you finished all the follow-ups? He said
Uh,
prepare for 6 random drug tests with the end will say two
like
years.
2 years, and maybe it was 6 months.
No, once you complete step 5,
Yeah,
you are eligible to be hired.
but you could do your follow-ups at that job, but that has to be within like a year, right? Within a
You,
year.
you start your follow-ups immediately
Yeah.
after the return to duty step is done. The employer puts you under the wheel, and your follow-ups start. You will do so many follow-ups in so many months.
He put the company that's charging Charles. This is a SAP company that's charging 850 called wearecbf.com. I think. Let's
Oh
see.
no! Oh no!
Let's
That's
well,
that's
guys,
bad.
screw that website. Go to focus7.llc and you can
Yeah,
do it for half that
yeah.
and actually have develop a rapport with your SAP counselor. Um,
There's so many things wrong with this. What he's saying. Also, I want everybody in the nation to understand this. When you see 6 follow-ups, everybody assume that's how many it's going to be. 6 is the minimum follow-ups you're allowed to give a driver. You can
yeah,
give a driver 20 follow-ups in 12 months if you want to. And believe me, the FMCSA is starting to notice SAPs that continually do the minimum, the six. The 6.
mhm.
It's became so prevalent that you just get 6 follow-ups that everybody, all the drivers around the nation think it's only 6 follow-ups. No, don't, don't get it twisted.
Yeah, I looked up that website. It doesn't show up, so they're not that big. Like they're nothing compared to like you look up that We Are CBF or whatever clothing company comes up, but you look up Charles Irby, Focus 7 LLC, first one on Google. You'll see him on YouTube, Revive and Drive. You'll see him on all the podcast stuff. You'll see him on his website. Charles is reputable. Don't listen to people that just put a hashtag in front of something and type in a website. No, you guys, you want to know the
Yeah, don't
trustworthy
go to a
SAP. Word
yeah,
of
don't
mouth.
don't go to a clothing company to get your sap done. Okay, don't do that. You don't want to walk down a runway, fashion runway. You want to drive a truck. Okay,
I
so
don't want to walk down the
yeah,
fashion runway.
yeah. Who do you think you was Kanye? No, come on. So I've been in existence for a long time. Been doing this for a long time. Just give me a call, 404-620-1944. Or you could go out to my website that explains everything. It shows all my certifications, qualifications, all my accreditations, all my driver reviews. Well, not all of them. I get so many of them, I can't put them all on the website. But it's important if you're going to hire somebody, you wanted some references. You want to know what people are saying. And they're there on my website. So you want to have confidence in your SAP, because I had it done to me 2 times this week, Brad. Are you sure you're not a scam? Because see, I got scammed. I gave this guy $500, and then when I time for me to accept his clearinghouse, he wasn't on the clearinghouse, and I lost the money, and he ran off. I said, "Oh boy, how do I know you're not going to do that?" Well,
I'm all over.
Yeah, you can go out to the clearinghouse, type my name in where it says, "Who is your SAP?" Just type my name in, Charles Irby, and you'll see all my stuff come up. The name of my company address, everything about me. So that means I'm registered on the clearinghouse, not as a regional SAP, which is a CAC. I'm a federal SAP. And actually, if possible, I can even practice being a SAP in China, Israel. There's a map on our ICDC that shows that IRCD, whatever it's called, that shows where we could practice. So get somebody that's reputable. And
absolutely.
You know,
Charles,
looking at this, he got a lot of disinformation, don't he, Brad?
he does.
Yeah.
And all right, Charles, you ready for this one?
Oh, give it to me. Shoot.
The process for a false positive and how to fight it. So you go, all right. So say you go take a drug test, and I haven't read this story up. I don't know if you see on your screen here, in construction and failed a drug test for meth, CDL driver. And from what I've gathered just by skimming over it, it might have been a false positive, but the amount of bullshit you have to go through just to prove that you didn't do a hard drug, it became a false positive. Let's would you like to hear the story?
No,
maybe you can put some insight on this. This is kind of a Reddit day, little bit of talking, and we'll go back to some talking points as well. I'm just, like I said, our podcast is going with the flow of things, you know. Anyway, so last one for the Reddit day. We're gonna go in construction and failed a drug test for meth, CDL driver. It says, let's start by saying my husband does not do drugs. I can't even get the man to take Tylenol for a headache. I'm like that. I can't take Tylenol. I can't take any medicine like that. My husband works in demolition of many properties in our town. Some are newer buildings, many of them old buildings. He is a cleanup crew running big truck. Her grammar is wild. Loading and unloading at drop locations. He is also employed with he has also been employed with my company as well when he is needed because he is a CDL driver. Her grammar. Anyway, he was sent for drug tests for my company on 10/31. This was 3 months ago that this was posted, by the way, so this is recent. He passed with flying colors as always. On 11/5, his job sent him for a drug test. He went to the doctors, some office I used for my company, took a drug test, and about an hour or so later, they called him. An hour, Charles? Let me stop right there. When you go for a drug test, typically it has to get shipped out somewhere, and it could take up to 2 or 3 days for them to call you, if not longer. An hour seems really quick, unless it's one of those pee in the cup ones, but still. So something seems off right there alone. But anyway, so about an hour or so later, they called him and asked him to come back for another test. Said the first one was inconclusive. So he did. This week, results came back and said, my husband failed for meth. I asked him if he took any meds, and he said no. We asked for a split to be done. So basically, a split, as you know, Charles, is where they take your pee and they do another test, and it actually could cost about $250 just to do that. It's expensive.
And people need to understand, when they do a split, that's in our language is called an aliquot. They just pouring a portion of your urine into another cup. So you're
Yeah.
just testing your same urine that you gave them. So,
Yep. They
okay.
told us they can't because urine is no longer acceptable. That right there is another red flag.
Yeah.
They are treating my husband like a meth head. He is embarrassed and devastated. This has happened. He swears he has no idea how this could happen, and I fully believe him. I've been around people who have done drugs, and my husband of 7 years has never changed who he is, or how he sleeps, or acts. It's plain to tell if you know him, he is not on meth. I've searched online for help, and it's always medications, but he doesn't take medications at all. We now have to pay a ton of money to do the drug program so he doesn't lose the CDL. Again, you don't have to pay a ton of money. I mean, $400 might be a lot,
Yeah.
especially if you're out of a job, but better than 1,000, better than 2,000.
Yeah. So,
So her
yeah.
fear and question is there anything you can come into contact with that isn't medication or meth that will make you fail a drug test for meth? Maybe in the line of work he does. I'm scared we pay all this money and he fails again. He will lose the CDL forever. We don't have a choice but to pay for the program, but I want to make sure there is nothing he comes in contact with that would make him fail for meth again. I think it could be a false positive. You can't fail a drug
Absolutely.
test.
That's
You,
the first thing came in my head. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't fail a drug test for coming in contact with something, right? It's got to be ingested. Um, I think there was some. I think somebody made a boo boo from the way.
Yes.
If the story is true, the way it sounds, somebody messed up at the doctor's office somewhere.
There you go. In my experience, this has happened, and sometimes quite a bit. I don't have any proof that I can take to court. Therefore, I have to be limited on how much I say on this. But in my opinion, there are testings that are flawed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There are some drivers that are bone drive, sober as a judge, and they get a false positive. Now they're really embarrassed. Their family's embarrassed, and they got to pay a lot of money. And I got a driver on my hands that's ballistic. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
it was known in the past that Sudafed can give you a reading of cocaine. Now I think they fixed it with Sudafed, but they used to give people a reading
Uh,
of
amphetamines,
cocaine.
actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, amphetamine.
amphetamine.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this was known in halfway houses, and then there's some antipsychotics
Well,
and some antidepressants. Sometimes
Sudafed.
Prozac can give you a false reading.
So Sudafed used to be actually put into meth. It was part of the ingredient. And
Okay, that yeah.
so what would happen is basically the government. It was getting so bad that the government made it to where Sudafed was behind glass, like a glass wall. And in order
That's
for you
right.
to get a box of Sudafed, you actually had to sign your name and your address and all that to buy Sudafed. Now they changed. That was back then. They changed the ingredients of it.
Hmm.
But what people would do, like the drug manufacturers, is they would use Smurfs, and basically Smurfs is all these different people who would go into the stores, they would buy Sudafed, and they would sell it back to the
The
drug
cooks. Yeah,
to the cooks, yes.
yeah, to the cooks.
And so, but after a while, the DEA caught onto that, and it got put to a halt real quick. I learned that off of the show Breaking Bad. You ever see that show?
Yeah, I've seen parts of it. I really like
Mhm.
to watch it from the beginning, but
Oh, it's so good.
yes, yeah, that was known to me when I was a drug counselor way back in what, in 2011, 2010, those days that people were getting popped
Mhm.
and they were taking a flu medication. And there's another medication another one that starts with a T. It doesn't come to mind, but that was giving people false positives as a narcotic or a drug. And
Interesting.
yeah, and it wasn't Tylenol, it was something else. It always seems to be the flu. You pour the powder in hot water, that type of thing, and drink it down to combat the flu. That type of product
Mhm.
always gives out a marker as if it's one of the big five drugs. And now here's the thing: the FMCSA declares explicitly on their federal regulations They don't want to hear it. You can tell,
Yep, you just hit the
yeah,
money on that.
that's where the pain comes in. They don't want to hear it. You could tell them, the judge or whoever, all you want, that you don't do drugs. It's got to be
Mhm.
wrong. You're going to get a SAP violation. Once you get a violation posted on the clearinghouse, it is in concrete, and it's very difficult to get it removed, even if you are honest and you're correct. You're
When
screwed.
the medical officer calls or whatever and tells you that you failed, they do ask you what prescriptions did you take or what
That's
medication did you
good.
take that could cause this. But no matter what you give them, like they're just gonna be like, yeah, you're a drug addict, basically. Um, and some of them could be the MRO, the medical review officer.
Yes,
That
yes.
yeah, some of them could be really weird. And one other thing I wanted to note on that post is the fact that because he failed the drug test, now he's automatically looked at as a meth head. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and that's sad.
That's a stigma we were talking about last time. Is you
Yep.
get a stigma now, and you are now a SAP driver, which has a stigma to it, and you're looked at differently. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. But
Mhm.
let me explain this to everybody that's listening, especially the bureaucrats out there that have the gallows and the rope ready to hang anybody, especially people like me. I do not advocate for drivers. I advocate for safety on the freeways as a gatekeeper to make sure they're safe. But
Mhm.
I also advocate for mental health. And that's what me and Brad do. This is an area of mental and behavior health that affects people. And
Yes,
I'm
it
an
does.
advocate, and you can't, and Jesus gives me that right, not you. So I'm going to stay with it. I'm going to continue to be an advocate for mental and behavior health. Me and Brad both.
Absolutely. We were getting into that last week a little bit, and I wanted to talk more about it this week for sure. But I had a little incident Sunday, and my mental health.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, yes.
but I mean, we could talk. We can still get into it. Just remember, last week where I said, in order for me to help others, I need to help myself first, and I need to
Right.
heal first. Um, that's a really big thing because how can you help others if you can't help yourself? Like it's there's a lot of things that happen, and one key word you said to me after I explained what happened was trauma. Trauma is
Mm,
it could be minor, but
right.
it's still trauma. It's a memory, and
Yes.
it can last forever. And depending on the circumstances, it could take years of counseling just to forget it, just to handle it, just to accept it, to be able to feel normal after you experience a certain amount of trauma. I
Yes.
mean, gosh, we all have it. There's a lot
Yes.
of people who have
Yes.
not a lot. Everybody has trauma. You can have trauma from the first day you're born, you know. Um, but the one stuff that we remember is the stuff when we start getting older and our kids, whether it be abusive parents, whether it be drugs, and you know what else I learned in counseling, Charles?
What's that?
We we don't learn just the good stuff from our family, from our parents.
Right.
Um, if we see our parents fighting, right,
Yes.
and maybe dad lays a hand on mom, or mom lays a hand on dad.
Yes.
As a child, we obtain that information, and we now have that in our head, like, oh, okay, mom and dad are doing it. It's okay for me to do it,
Hmm.
and then the cycle continues, just like drugs. You see mom and dad drinking or using drugs. Oh, well, they're doing it. It's okay for me to do it, you know, and thus developing more a domino effect to where if you have kids, you do something to mom or you're doing drugs or whatever, then it's going to show that, oh, show your kids that, okay, it's okay for them to do it when they get older.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to come to the term of it's not okay. You need to put a stop to it, explain it, and talk to someone about it, you know, and fully accept that that's not a normal way of life.
Exactly. That last part is the whole key. You are dysfunctional, but you
Hmm.
think you're functional. It's like
Hmm.
we are really nice cars, just came off the showroom, but trauma, as we go down the road, we get a dent. Sometimes it's just running into something. It's a small dent. We can handle it. Sometimes we get trauma. If we get into a car crash, we get serious trauma as a car, or if we get uh, train wreck, we're demolished with trauma. Trauma is an accident to a new car. That car,
I'm a 92 Geo Metro used on Craigslist right now, bro. I,
well, yeah, we're all
I,
for
I,
Focus,
I,
whatever
I
escorts.
yeah, I got high mileage, but hey,
Yeah,
but let me tell you something. My gas mileage it lasts forever.
yeah, you get
So
good mileage.
yeah,
We're old piece of leather, but we well put together. That's right. So
yeah. Hey, the little cars actually, I had one when I was younger. Those were really good cars. And you're right, man. Like that's a perfect analogy. It really
we
is.
don't drive the same. Once you have a
Mm-mm.
car that been in an accident, even if you did get it fixed, it doesn't drive the same. It
Nope.
it's We're never the same. That's what trauma does to us. We're never the same. We're forever changed. You know,
And
and then we go through life and we accumulate more dents, more dents. Your wife is cheating on you, big dent. That's a good
hmm
little crash right there.
hmm
You failed a license or certification and you failed it in front
I
of
did
everybody. Oh boy, that feels bad.
to
Uh,
get fired from a job.
Get fired from a job. Or your relatives at the barbecue, they huddled away from you and talked about you behind your back and you found out
Oh,
trauma. You know, it comes in so many forms. Uh,
hmm
you get the wrong idea about God. You think God is a mean bipolar drunk because your life is a mess and you blame it on him. Now you're developing a big piece of ball of trauma that's really deep because now
hmm
your belief system is totally demolished. Trauma, it messes with your belief system. And so much of our drivers, our truck drivers that use a little, typically drugs are used to medicate. After a
hmm
while, it's a
Self
party.
medication.
Yeah, it's a party in the beginning.
Hmm
But it's self medication. You're trying to find something so you can make it through the day because of trauma is one of them. Because of trauma that lives inside of you.
hmm And
So
like I
yeah,
stated on our first episode, Charles, I said, when somebody fails a drug test, yeah, they chose to pick up the drugs. They chose to use the drugs. They chose whatever drug it is. They chose to do it. Absolutely. But what
yeah,
trauma? What are they trying to heal? What's going on in their personal life that caused them to act out that way
right,
and to
right,
do that? It's self medication because a lot of times, people are too afraid to go to counseling. People are too afraid to talk to somebody, especially men. Us men,
yes,
we bear
yeah,
so much on our shoulders, and we're supposed to be the man of the house, and
right, right,
and we have to just keep our mouth shut, and eventually, keep your mouth shut too long, you're going to be like a volcano, and you're
right.
going to explode. You know.
It's very important for us men to know that it's okay. It's okay because surviving and living life uh, as trouble free as much as you can. That's masculinity.
Hmm
Seeing your children are watching you, seeing that you going through a lot, but you do it with dignity and respect without destroying everything around you. That's masculinity. Well, how do you get to the point of being able to do this? You have to get help. And I do want our drivers out there that are going through things. Uh, Life can be messy for truck drivers, their personal lives, just by the nature of the business and the
hmm
hours they work. If you think you need to talk to somebody, grab them, get on the internet and get help and just do what's called talking, interventions.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what you went through is not normal, but we get so beat up in life, we consider it normal. And
Uh,
that's the problem. We think dysfunction is functional. And therefore, we're going to pick up some weed and we're going to drink. Alcohol is a great medication for pain.
yeah, and that's why a lot of people drink alcohol for not only pain but also for they for heartbreak, so internal pain.
Internal pain.
Uh, and I would say it's a great. You don't make it sound like yeah, like go drink alcohol, it solves all the problems. It can also take you too. Alcohol can take everything from you.
Take everything.
Hmm.
Alcohol is the most volatile drug of them all because
Yeah,
alcohol causes fatalities, injuries, crashes, pure destruction.
you know
Alcohol.
what? That just reminded me. Oh, continue. I'm going to look up DUI crashes, alcohol versus weed.
Well, I want to say this. Now, everybody that's been listening, Brad, he may have noticed it or not. He gave everybody the blueprint of how to handle a personal trauma. Okay, a family member jumped in his shit for no reason. It didn't explain it, didn't think make things clear, so it appeared to be just an attack. Okay, that causes trauma to you when you are attacked without reason. He explained a good solution. He talked to me about it. He he did not uh, wrap it around in the back of his head, make sure nobody knows about it. He did not produce shame inside of himself to keep it from others. He talked to me about it before we got on this podcast, and as he's probably talked to others also. That's how it's done. All my drivers out there, if you're going through something, talk to somebody. Now, it doesn't have to be a real close friend. Sometimes it's best that if it's a complete somebody that's unknown to you, a priest or even a random person, I don't care. Somebody that's
Hmm.
not going to come back and spread your business in front of the whole world like, some people do, you know, but you want to get it explained out of your body through verbalizing it, out of your psyche, out of that tortured insides of you, get it out.
Yep.
That is the Prozac of life, talking. So good for
Yep.
you, Brad. You're a good example of what a real truck driver should do.
I'm still learning how to do it. Like I said in the first podcast, I was so used to being alone in the truck that it's still hard for me to reach out and talk. But I mean, now when we have a show literally where we talk about anything and everything when it comes to the SAP and trucking and mental, like that's a perfect time to talk about it.
Yeah,
Um, so actually, alcohol is still number one when it comes to wrecks. By the way,
yeah.
the 54% reported last port yeah 54% reported past month alcohol use, 16.7% cannabis use, and I don't know what the RDD, 4.2% alcohol only RDD, and then 5.5% cannabis only RDD. I don't know what none of that means, but yeah, seems like alcohol is still the
The
big
thing
one.
about alcohol, and I guess we'll move on from this, but the thing about alcohol is that alcohol, different from all the other drugs, alcohol is a drug. It's a spirit. You
Mhm.
ingest alcohol, now you got two different distinct spirits inside of your host, which is your body. Alcohol is a spirit. It really
That's
is.
why they call it spirits.
Yeah, it's a living
Allegedly.
entity. Now you got two. You got your original spirit, and then you're
Mhm.
sharing the living room with this guy you just put inside.
Mm.
And this guy's you know this guy sometimes wants to take over, and he usually takes over in violence and
Yeah.
unreasonableness.
Yeah. Oh, here's some information. You ready for this? Car crashes involving weed. Uh, sorry. So it's just after the Canadian legalization in 2018, when marijuana stores and products were limited, researchers found a 94% increase in emergency room visits. As commercialized increased the marijuana was more widely available. Visits to the emergency room grew 233%
Wow.
compared. Wow.
That's
Yeah, and then in marijuana, all right, so car crashes involving weed were serious, and marijuana involved accidents. Nearly 90% of the victims arrived by ambulance, the study found. When no alcohol or cannabis was involved, the number of people that required an ambulance dropped to 40%. In addition, nearly 50% of marijuana users in a car accident required hospital admission, compared to just over 6% of those who did not use. Yeah.
it's real. It's real.
That's why and that right there is why it will never be legal in trucking, because just in the car drivers alone, we've seen a major increase of wrecks. And when you add a substance, uh if you had if they made weed legal, the crashes increased 233%. How much more can it increase if you add truck drivers who want to abuse it and go down the road high?
That'd be horrific. Here in Atlanta area, Highway
Oh my
20,
God.
20
Yes.
can be a bowling alley of death. If
Yeah.
if it got stepped on. You familiar with 20 here and
Oh
20
my
everywhere, I
gosh.
guess.
Yeah, I know Atlanta.
Oh boy.
The
So
traffic there, man. What do you think about legalization of all drugs?
no, we're not ready for that. Absolutely not ready for that.
You've heard of that though, like where they've talked about legalizing
Not
drugs in
all
general.
drugs. Not all drugs.
I'm talking the hard stuff. I'm talking.
So the world be like Kensington and what in Philadelphia. Every city will be Kensington. If that's not the right name for it, it'll be it'll be Babylon. Sodom and Gomorrah and Babylon
I'll
all
show you.
wrapped up in one. It'll be the end. Um, we're not human beings. We're just not designed for that because we do have a spirit. And I don't want to go into preaching, but that spirit was created to us by Jesus Christ. So we got to follow rules and regulations. And boy, when you get into just legalizing horse
Here's
tranquilizers, oh boy.
here's your video, Kensington, right here. Let me put it on the screen.
Oh God.
And for those of you listening, if you're watching on YouTube, you will be able to see this as well. So if you're listening on the podcast, you'll be able to find it on YouTube, and I'll post a link down in the description. You ready, Charles? This is what you're talking about. That's the same town that you just said. Let's put this up.
That's terrible. Now look at that.
This guy is sleeping standing up. Wow.
Now, everybody that's watching this, just know that the humans, we are spiritual beings housed in a meat sack or a body. These are spiritual beings really sleeping on the ground.
Yep.
So
here's what I say about the legalization. I'm going to give you another spin on this. All right, Charles. So harm reduction. In California, they have clinics where people can actually use their drugs because it's decriminalized already in California. Like heroin, meth, all that. And they go in these clinics, they use their drugs, and they're not sharing needles, so they're not spreading disease.
Right.
They aren't on the streets, getting stomped on, stolen from, beat up, whatever the case may be. I feel like if they do decriminalize it all over, the harm reduction fact of it would be nice. But here's the downside.
Yes.
These harm reduction places are not being used.
Oh.
Yeah, so they have they'll have people there, but it's not how do I explain? I have to pull up a video one of these days. I'll do some research and we could talk about that. But basically, sometimes the buildings will be empty, but damn well these people have have
Oh,
drugs all the time. Yeah, like so either they're too afraid. I mean, there'll be people, one or two people, but they don't allow filming in there, so there's really no way to tell. But there was an investigative reporter who
mhm,
actually was like, "Yo, like you got these places up, we're spending millions of dollars, but I only see a
mhm.
couple people in there. Like, what's going on?" And I think it's a good service, but there's addicts who don't want to. Well, I can't say they don't want people to know if they're falling asleep on the street, but that maybe they just don't want to associate with other people because they're just so destroyed. They're so
Yeah,
dead
yeah,
inside.
yeah, yeah. I think it's also could be something else. People are gaming. The people that are sponsoring these clinics and stuff like this, that getting taxpayer dollars allocated to them for this particular purpose, are gaming the system by basically keeping that money and not putting it to use to get people into the facility.
Hmm.
It could be, it could be so much fraud in this area that's easily undetectable. And we all know that these type of places are known for kickbacks. You give the city council person a nice little envelope,
Yep.
a lot of this goes on with money that's being allocated to neighborhood agencies and stuff like this, sponsored by grants and taxpayer money. And the executive director, he's driving around in a limousine. Yeah, and it's just, how can this be? So there could be a lot of factors, and I'm not blaming anybody, but I just want to say that's another option of what's could be happening. Now with harm reduction, well, we had something like that here in Atlanta, in the Bluff. The Bluff is known as the heroin supermarket of Atlanta.
Mm. Kind of
It's
like Skid Row in California,
yeah,
and then we have
it's
South Side in Phoenix.
It's
Yep.
the Costco of heroin. At least it was known. I think they cleaned it up a lot. Uh, so they had, little vans out there that would hand out needles.
Hmm.
Now, what's that into the? I'm not judging one way or another, but that lets the addict know on the street when they handed out fresh needles that it's okay to get high.
Yeah,
They are given permission by the state to get high because they
I,
got
I
needles from the state.
I agree to an
I don't,
extent.
yeah,
However,
yeah, yeah.
what about the people? Like, you're right. You're 100% right that it makes it harder for them to want to quit. Like, but in order for an addict to want to quit getting high,
Hmm.
they actually have to want to quit. They have to make that choice. You cannot
There you
force
go.
them. So yeah, you're right. When they give them that needle, that's
I'm not
they're not
saying
gonna
it's right or
want
wrong, and uh, I'm
they're
not,
not gonna want to
I
quit
have no
with that
dog in
needle.
it. Yeah, yeah, but that's what's out there.
But at the
You know,
same time, these are human beings, and this is kind of like where my soft side comes in.
yes,
You know, I don't want to like, yeah, they made these choices, but they're not. Who knows what's going on in their life that caused them to do that? We can't just throw them away as humans, as society,
absolutely not.
but we cannot dump millions of dollars into something that they're not going to take advantage of, whether it be housing, whether it be uh the clinic that we're just talking about. If you want to throw some needles out there to help prevent
The
viruses,
spread of HIV and all the
yeah,
other infections,
then
that
yes,
that's a lifesaver.
yeah. But
You know,
like these people shouldn't die because our mental health system in America is screwed up so bad and underfunded. Like,
it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, let's relate this to SAP drivers. Most drivers appreciate a SAP not talking down to them.
yeah,
Blaming them for getting the SAP violation, looking down on them, thinking of them with the stigma of a drug user, chronic drug user, just talking down to them. I get a lot of my drivers really appreciate me not doing it. And they say they just left a SAP that talked to them crazy and they end up cussing each other out on the phone. Uh,
yeah,
you don't talk down to people that have this horrendous
it's
uh,
hurting.
yeah, that they're hurting. Now what does help them, I got this philosophy. I'm more than just a sap, because a sap is just going through a bureaucracy brought down by the FMCSA, the government, that you do these particular things and then you leave. No, you
Mhm,
got to help a driver. A driver sometimes need to talk. A lot of
mhm,
times I just shut up and stay on the phone and let them talk because instantly they felt comfortable with me. And that helped them so much. They went more than just doing some online drug and alcohol classes and stuff like that. They decided they're going to want to get into recovery. That's a whole different
mm,
animal. I want all my drivers to go through recovery, just like you did. What other drivers are going around talking about their trauma, going through anger management, talking about the things they learned? Brad Larson's doing it every day.
and I'm not done yet. Like just because I'm doing it doesn't mean like I'm healed. This has been a journey, and I'm still
Yes.
learning. I'm still learning and healing. Like
It,
it's
but Brad, wouldn't you want most drivers to also go through something like that that you went through instead of, in and out, give me some money, give me $850. Okay, I got you going. You're good.
mhm. No,
No,
no. I was talking to one of my friends and said, one of the greatest things that happened to me was actually getting in the SAP program because I was always a believer that everything happens for a reason, and here we are 3 years later, 2 years later, and now we got a podcast because I take what happened to me and I teach people, and I'm
right.
with the professional. We're teaching people and bringing out the news that needs to be brought out, and helping those so that they don't have to go through what I went through, and they have the information and they don't have to be scared, and that's what's inspired all of this. Everything happens for a reason, and we just take one day at a time and
Yes,
grow from it.
one day at a time. That was key right there. I
Hmm.
want all my drivers that I take through the SAP process to get better, to get well. I want them to leave me better than they were when they came to me, and most of them do. I can't be a positive effect on everybody. I'm not God. However, and there's sometimes me and some drivers, we go round and around because I can be firm. I'm not a pushover. However, I really try my best on
Yeah,
earth to be of use.
and you being a spiritual person, God
Yeah.
sees that. God sees us doing work, and
Yes.
it's helping. So
It's
yeah.
so important. I get so many calls. I got some this week that this guy really regretted going through the first SAP and just begged me, how do I get rid of him? I said, you can't. You went too far into the process. You got to stay with him. And
Mm,
they just broken down, and because they were never had been exposed to people like me and you.
well, that's got to change, and we got it. And I feel like when first made our first video a few years ago, it reached a lot of people, and I think it did save hundreds. I don't know how many people called you after that, but I know it saved a lot of people, and then I'm ready to keep saving more.
Yeah, it
Um,
was an uptick in calls for some reason, and I think this had to do with it. Yes, and you know, we just do God's will and then let the chips fall where they may, and they typically
mhm.
fall pretty good. We usually
Yes,
get that sevens and elevens a lot, you know.
absolutely. Well, my man, um, I don't really have much else to say. I think we covered quite a bit. I don't know if you have anything else you want to bring up, Charles. Uh-oh, did his computer die? But all right, Charles. Well, today is a little bit of a shorter show, but it doesn't mean it's not good in quantity. I mean, not quantity, quality. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Honestly, it's just with the way I have everything set up, I'm getting uncomfortable. I'm not as comfortable as I normally am with our podcast. Hopefully by next weekend, I'll have my studio back up and we'll be back on the ball with this. But I still think we had a lot of good talks today. What do you think?
I think so also. I think it was a lot of good information that we got out to the nation, to our truck drivers out there. And I just think we filled in a lot of gaps on what was going on inside the Reddit sections that we were reading,
Mm-hmm.
and also going on and on and on about good mental health as a truck driver. So you did it
Absolutely.
again. You did it again. You shot another 3-pointer today.
um, I think we all just when we discuss stuff like that, it's just life experiences, and I think from now on I might refer to the Reddit community because that gives us a lot to talk about and to see
Yeah,
what other people are talking about, what they're struggling with, and we might start our own Reddit. What do you say about that, Charles?
absolutely, absolutely.
And Twitter as well. We're gonna have a Twitter account. Probably gonna work on today. We share all our podcasts there, and if you guys want to tweet us and ask us questions there, I will more than welcome you all to do that, and we'll read them
Yes,
out and answer every question you got. Um, but yeah, guys, this is Revive and Drive podcast.
yes.
I'm Brad Larson. This is my co-host Charles Irby,
This
and
is Charles.
he's the SAP counselor, the
I
guy
could be your
you all
sap. Give me a
that you,
call. I could be your saps. Yeah, absolutely.
and where do they call you at, Charles?
404 641, well, 620 1944. Just give me a call. I could
And
be
you
your
got,
sap.
of course, you can visit him on focus7.us and see his whole process breakdown. Real simple. If you guys want to listen to our podcast, you can listen to us on Amazon, iHeartRadio, and of course Podbean and YouTube, and much more coming up in the future as well. And we are also on TikTok. You could follow. It's a Big Trucker B. And the YouTube is Big Trucker B. You can also follow Charles on his YouTube as Charles the Sap. And yeah, we will answer every question we can. If we don't know it, we will look it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here for you guys.
Absolutely. We are. And we will be here next week and the week after and the week after.
Every Saturday. You know,
Every,
we fly it as we build it. It's fun the way we do it.
Yeah, well, we were going to do a live show, but I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to do my first live show, I want to make sure get my studio back up again with the camera on. Today is just audio only, so, but we will be live on TikTok first, and then we'll move into the YouTube realm and go on from there. So,
All right. But thanks all my drivers out there. Thank you for your service.
thank you guys so much for everything you do. The world will not be running without you guys for sure. You are the lifeblood of America, and we appreciate everything y'all do. But with that being said, I'm going to conclude our show and thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
All right. And we are clear, my friend.